up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight.
In the saddle till the job's done right.
Welcome to Burning Daylight, the only podcast for the working cowboy. All right, welcome back, Daylight Burner. Sorry for the delay there. I swear to God, I'm falling apart here. Today I've recorded this episode already with no sound, so now we got a good 7 minutes of blank screen silence. But I'm here now, so don't you worry. Hope your weekend turned out good. This is Monday, November 13th. This is the Friggin' Farm and Ranch Report. I'm gonna have to redo all my AI generated cover art here to add and ranch into my title, but it just felt too farmerish to just call it the Friggin' Farm Report. So, as y'all know, I'm not a farmer, never will be. Never have been. I've done some farming, but I'm not a farmer. And so anyhow, it was a good week for me. It's been warm. Cooling off though. I mean, like it's getting pretty chilly at night, freezing pretty hard. Nice enough out during the day though. I mean, it's mid 60s, pretty nice day. And getting ready for what sounds like shaping up to be a wet winter. At least here in this part of the world, but we'll go ahead. We'll get going here with the Friggin' Farm and Ranch Report for the week of November 13th, 2023. Start off with the market report. This is as of Thursday afternoon, so it's a little outdated. I haven't checked the market today, but CME Livestock Exchange, live cattle are trading lower, 505 lower at 174.35. Feeder cattle down 785 at 224, 925. Hogs up 35 cents at 72.50. Corn's down, soybeans are down, wheat's down, cotton's up. Winter storm in Alaska. Cash trades at a standstill. So thus far for Thursday in all regions, negotiated cash trading has been slow on light to moderate demand. In the Texas Panhandle, compared to last week, live FOB purchases traded mostly for $4 lower at 181, with a light test noted. In Kansas, compared to last week, live FOB purchases traded mostly $5 lower at 180, with light test noted. In Nebraska, a few live purchases traded at 181.50, however, not enough for market trend. Last week, live FOB purchases traded at 185. Dress delivered purchases compared to last week traded mostly $5 lower at 287. The Western Corn Belt, a few live FOB and purchase deliveries traded at 181 and from 283 to 287. However, not enough for a market trend. Last week, live FOB purchases traded at 185 and dress delivered purchases traded at 292. The cattle on feed numbers as of October 1st, second highest inventory on record. Cattle and calves on feed for the slaughter market in the United States for feedlots with a capacity of 1,000 head or more. Total 11.6 million head on October 1st, 2023. The inventory was 1% above October 1st, 2022. This is second highest October 1 inventory since the series began in 96. The inventory included 6.95 million steers and steer calves, up slightly from the previous year. This group accounted for 60% of the total inventory. Heifers and heifer calves accounted for 4.64 million, up 1% from 2022. Placements in the feedlots during September totaled 2.21 million head, 6% above 2022. Net placements were 2.15 million head. During September, placements of cattle and calves weighing less than 600 pounds were 460,000 head. 6 weights, 355,000. 7 weights, 485,000. 8 weights were 521,000. Nine weights, 290,000, and 1,000 and above were 95,000 head. Marketing of fed cattle during September totaled 1.66 million head, 11% below 2022. So we got a high inventory and pretty steep drop off compared to last year on the number marketed. National Drought Monitor showed major improvement in the Midwest and Plains, but the southeastern drought has worsened. So almost every state in the Plains and Midwest saw major improvements, but every state in the southeast saw drought develop and or worsen. As of October 31st, 2023, 30.68% of the U.S. and Puerto Rico and 36.53% of the lower 48 states are in drought, according to the U.S. Drought Monitor. Beef exports sales were down 2%, or 17.1 thousand or so 17,100 metric tons. And beef production slightly down. And so this is all from National Beef Wire, which is, I don't know exactly how all the companies fit together, but Corbett Wall and the Feeder Flash are highly involved with that. Moving along in from that into this article here from Market Insider, beef prices hit record high as southwestern U.S. recovers from the worst dry spell in 1,200 years, it says. Beef prices have spiked to a record high recently as a mega drought that slammed U.S. a few years ago shrank cattle supplies. Retail prices hit $8 a pound, topping the previous record of $7.90 during the pandemic, according to Financial Times analysis of data from the Ag Department. That's after the southwestern U.S. saw the lowest rainfall seen in 1,200 years during the 2020 to 2021 season, according to a study published last year. While the historic dry spell has since eased somewhat, inventories of hay are still low, and feed costs remain too high for some cattle farmers to afford. The result, a whittled down national herd size that fell to a 61-year low. Intensifying the high feed costs has been the Russia-Ukraine war that's pushed prices of soy, corn, and wheat. All of which ultimately means farmers can support fewer cattle, and that scarcity spells higher beef prices. Unlike hens and pigs who give birth to multiple eggs and piglets a year, heifers give birth to one calf every 12 months. It's a nice little tidbit that Market Insider gave for the city folks. The impact of the drought, the higher feed costs, and the cattle supplies expect to have longer term effects in the market. Rancher in Louisiana told the Financial Times it's better to offload cattle than to feed them. This drought is an environmental event having a significant impact on the national herd. She said, "You're seeing cattle being sold off heavily, and my immediate concern is what does our region and the country's cattle industry look like 6 months from now, 12 months from now, and 12 months from now? What do our markets look like?" That's I would say that is a very relevant point to bring up. 4.5 million heifers on feed that will not be kicking out a calf next year. So, yeah, drought's a messy thing, and it was a bad one here out west, and luckily, like, it's been a good year. So I know for us, for about a year now, we've seen pretty much nothing but dairy cattle. Between the drought and people selling off, or a heavy snow and rainfall led to a lot of feed and high feed prices. Kept a lot of people from sending us cattle, especially when there was feed to be had outside, growing in the ground. So it's hard to, can't blame them for it, and it's it's kind of the cyclical nature. I mean, we were already at the lowest cow herd in 61 years, and then now we got another 4.5 million heifers on feed that kind of taken out of production. So it'll be something to look forward in the 2025 cattle numbers. Will these states that are coming out of a drought out here in the West, are they going to be able to restock and rebuild some of the herd size, or uh, or are they these places in the Southeast? They're going to continue to liquidate. I don't know about parts of Texas, but I'm sure there's droughts an issue just about everywhere, and it's always you're always not far from a drought, so it's we're hoping for some more moisture this winter, but in the meantime, you couple that with the rising interest rates. So there was something else. There was another little tidbit in I think it was in that National Beef Wire piece. It was about maybe it was on the stock market. Yes, it was. So on the stock update, the Dow was down 223.69. Nasdaq was down 140.44. S&P was down 38.27. It says stocks were under pressure after Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell's comments. I don't remember what his comments were, but I'm sure they were something about how to curb inflation, they're going to have to continue to jack up interest rates, which honestly needs to happen, but that's it makes everything more expensive to borrow, and the ag economy in particular is hit significantly by just those few like 1% interest rate. Like, well, now you're going, we were at 0, now we're at like 5%, and that's a big deal in the long run. So now when you were looking at 3% mortgages, now you're looking at like 6-7%, which it's still nowhere near like the 18-20% you were seeing in the 80s that that they had to jack interest rates way up to curb the inflation of the 70s. So you had the stagflation issue, which a lot of people blamed on Carter, which he probably deserves some of it. But when you look at what happened leading up to that, you had from essentially 62 to 75 was the Vietnam War, and all the spending that goes on behind that. And like, that's one of the things that it's important to take note, particularly like on this Ukraine stuff. We've spent 100 and something billion already, and they're wanting more, and that, like, it's just become a stalemate at this point. And who knows how much we've already sent to Israel. And then it looks like we're sure gearing up for conflict with Iran, whether it's full scale war or not, I don't know. But Iraq was expensive enough, and Iran's about 4 times as big with a real military. I know Iraq had a real military too, but I think Iran's a little better trained and equipped and whatnot. And it's not flat desert, a lot of mountainous terrain. So like that, we get involved over there. Do we win? I don't know. Probably, I guess. Depends on what winning means, but it's going to be really goddamn expensive, and it's going to be bigger than what we've bitten off here in the last 20 years or so. It's be bigger than that. So yeah, you can look for this inflation to probably continue. We'll see how this foreign policy stuff goes, but it's having some crazy effects. Like all of this, the fertilizer crisis, the high grain prices, the high beef prices. It's just like a perfect storm of bullshit, and the ag sector gets hit particularly hard. So History doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. I've said that many times. Mark Twain is who I attribute it to. I don't know who originally said it, if he's the original attribution or what. But if we look back to like the 20s, we're coming off of World War One, huge amounts of spending and debt, uh, and massive unemployment. They had the bonus army of World War One vets who were promised a combat bonus, never got paid, and they marched on Washington, camped out, had the had the U.S. Army turned on them themselves, including I think Smedley Butler was a general. Um, and then then you went into the Roaring Twenties, but it was you have these like massive collapses after after the end of a major war like that, because you ramp up your war machine and you build up this production to fight a war, and then once the shooting's done, well then there's just massive unemployment. Like the soldiers all come home and a lot of them are just done, and then well now there's no need to make so many bombs unless you find somewhere else to send them. And the U.S. has been particularly good at finding somewhere else to send them since the end of World War II, and keeping that military industrial base chugging right along. So, but anyway, I guess getting a little off track. All these conflicts overseas have a major impact on what happens here as well. So I've got an article later on that we'll go a little more into that, but it's something to think about. Moving from the market side of things to kind of some policy. There's a new federal rule that seeks to curb deceptive practices in poultry production. And this was November 9th, just a couple of days ago. Federal ag officials are poised to enact new disclosure requirements for the poultry industry to give chicken growers a better understanding of their potential profits. The changes are meant to address some long-standing complaints by farmers who are contracted by large companies to grow chickens for meat. USDA officials said Wednesday. Most often, the companies are meat processors that pay farmers to grow their chickens. The companies provide the chicks, feed, and medicines, and the farmers provide the facilities and the labor to raise them until the birds are ready for slaughter. The farmers are often compensated on how efficiently they produce meat compared with other farmers contracted by the companies. And many farmers have complained to the USDA for more than a decade that the companies have too much leverage in arrangements and too little accountability, department officials said. That can result in farmers making less than expected profits while being saddled with debt for constructing or upgrading their facilities. It's high time that poultry growers get the benefit of robust transparency, upfront and ongoing, to clean up the broiler chicken market of deceptive practices, Andy Green, a USDA senior advisor for fair and competitive markets, said. The department announced this week the first in a series of new requirements that are a result of President Joe Biden's executive order in 2021 to increase competition in the country's economy. The new regulations require live poultry dealers to disclose to farmers the earnings of their contracted growers. The dealers must also describe how they handle flock losses associated with disease and natural disasters, shortages of food, and farmer complaints about food quality. The new regulations require dealers to guarantee a minimum number of flock placements with the farmers per year and specify the sizes of those flocks. Broiler chickens mature in about 2 months. Dealers that slaughter less than 2 million pounds of live broilers weekly or 104 million pounds annually are exempt. It's fair to say that for many, many years, we've heard concern from poultry growers as to whether or not the contracting and tournament system that they've engaged in provide a level of fairness and transparency, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack said Wednesday during a news conference. He said new regulations are being imposed under the Packers and Stockyards Act of 1921, the purpose of which is to protect farmers from unfair and monopolistic practices. They're expected to go into effect in late January. Consolidation in the meat packing industry gained renewed focus during the COVID-19 pandemic when large processing facilities were forced to temporarily close and some livestock producers had nowhere to sell their animals. Federal officials have said that a handful of large companies control about 85% of the beef market, 70% of the pork, and more than 50% of the chicken. So there's a really good book that covers a lot of this, and it's called The Meat Racket. And it's pretty biased, I'd say. It's maybe subtly so, but it's called The Meat Racket, The Secret Takeover of America's Food Business. And it's the story of John Tyson and the rise of the Tyson meat empire. And it's really is it's a fascinating book, but they go in pretty good detail about how this tournament system works between the poultry growers and how they're continually pushing one operator out with a new wave of chicken farmers. So you had like your traditional white Southerners, and then they got pushed out for like some out of town people moving into the South, and then I believe it was like Laotian from Laos, immigrants buying these chicken farms, and then like it was always in the new contract you had to upgrade your facility as you went, and had to take on these huge, massive $1 million loans, millions of dollars, and then they'd get screwed on the contract, and because they weren't able to compete with the newer facilities, and it was a whole mess. It's fascinating read. I'd recommend it. Christopher Leonard wrote it. It's called The Meat Racket, and it's on Audible. That's where I came about it. So, anyways, it explains it in there a lot better than I can. So, we'll see how that all plays out. But seems like it's a decent step in the right direction. The poultry and the hog industry, they got themselves into the point where like you don't have really any independent producers anymore. There's a handful of independent hog producers in the Midwest, but not many. It's all pretty consolidated, and there are these like massive operations, and a lot of times the people that own the land, they just contract out. They don't own the animals. They feed them for the Packers, and which under the Packers and Stockyards Act, they're not supposed to own the cattle for more than like 2 weeks. You know, it was like 2 weeks before deliveries when, or once they're sold, you had 14 days to deliver, and so like that period is the only time that the Packers own the live animal. Well, now they own them all the way through conception to slaughter, and like seems like in direct violation of the Packers and Stockyard Act. I'm not a lawyer, and I doubt my lawyer friend would be able to tell you much about this case. Maybe I don't know if Rob's how his expertise is on antitrust law. I'll ask him next time we're on Fence Post Politics, but we'll see how that one plays out. But also on kind of the same footing, Tyson's going to shut down 2 more processing plants. One in Columbia, South Carolina, and one in Jacksonville, Florida. So over the past year, Tyson and other meat companies have struggled with volatile prices and slow consumer demand, resulting in significant losses and cost-cutting measures to shore up their business. The latest 2 closures add to the 6 chicken plants that Tyson has shuttered this year. So they shut down 6 of them, as well as significant layoffs at a poultry complex in Wilkesboro, North Carolina last month. Spokesperson said the company will make efforts to support their workers, offering opportunities at other locations and partnering with state and local officials to provide any additional resources. We understand the impact of this decision on our team measures, the spokesperson said, with a focus on optimizing our operational footprint. We are reallocating resources to operate as efficiently as possible while maintaining ample capacity to serve our customers. A mix of challenges have spelled trouble for the U.S. industry this year, including low chicken prices, high input costs, and supply chain pressures that have raised the cost of beef and pork. This has translated to consecutive quarterly losses for JBS SA, Smithfield Parent, the WH Group, and Tyson, which the 2 quarters in a row they've lost money. That's shocking for those big companies. I mean, they were raking in the profit during COVID, and then after that plant fire in Holcomb, Kansas, like, man, they made a lot of money, but I guess it's catching back up, and inflation, the inflation deal catches everything. But it's a sad deal. So these were what they call. They're called it's a case ready facility. Case ready value added production facilities. It's about a couple hundred people in both places. So it's going to lead to further consolidation, and I would imagine you'll see these big packing giants start to move more facilities offshore, and I wouldn't be too awful surprised if you start seeing a lot more imported beef. But also, I was telling somebody, and maybe it's because I'm in a little bit of an isolated spot here in Nevada. We're one of the few, feedlots here in this part of the world that are not just like used a couple months out of the year during weaning time. There's we're one of the few year round feedlots here in this part of the world, and we're awful empty. But I don't know. I guess I don't know enough about the other feedlots, but they're saying that's one of the highest, the second highest cattle inventory numbers for cattle on feed. And I just wonder where all these cattle are coming from. There are a lot of, I know the crossbred dairy calves have been, they've been jumping up in numbers quite a bit, and I can see that as a continuing trend, particularly for the big operators, because the way that works with in cooperation with the dairy wants all their animals pretty much cookie cutter, and they've got that down to a pretty solid science. A lot of inbreeding, line breeding, if you will. But they've got the cookie cutter animal pretty well down. Now, if they can choose the beef semen that they want to use, they can get their choice of sires from the top, beef breed bulls that they want, and they can get sex semen, so they know they're getting a bull calf, and they know his genetics are supposed to do this, and this, and they've got these crossbred cattle gaining, not on par with with a native born steer, Angus steer, but like fairly close, and they grade really well, and they're cookie cutter, and just everything's the same. It's like a dream come true for these big packers, because like you don't have to adjust shit. You just one animal after another, just almost exactly the same, and it's efficient. And then those bull calves, they get sent to a calf ranch and then later on to a feedlot, finished out. And chances are they never see a blade of grass in their life. But boy, they can fine tune those genetics and pump them out at will. It's a smart move for those big packers. We'll see where it goes in the future, but uh, I'm really interested to see how the cattle herd rebounds as the western states come out of this drought, and hopefully the southeast gets some relief here before too long. Um, Moving along to the next article here. This is from Western Ag Reporter. Producers seek lawsuits as wild horse populations increase. Wild horses quote, are living symbols of the historic and pioneer spirit of the West, end quote, as determined by Congress under the Wild Free Roaming Horses and Burros Act of 1971. However, if left unchecked, wild horses become a threat to the ecosystems they inhabit. The agency tasked with managing and maintaining the health of the horses and the land is the BLM under the Federal Wild and Free Roaming Horses and Burros Act, or the Wild Horse Act. However, wild horse management has been the source of great scrutiny by producers and landowners alike and is the topic of a recent lawsuit. Colvin and Son LLC and Stone Cabin Ranch LLC claim the BLM has not done their job managing wild horses in the 540,000 acres that make up the Stone Cabin complex. They filed a lawsuit against the BLM and the U.S. Department of Interior on October 17th in the U.S. District Court of Nevada. Colvin and Son LLC, a cow-calf operation, was formed in the year 2000 and operates within the administrative boundary of the BLM Stone Cabin allotment and maintains both BLM and Forest Service grazing permits. The court case stated this livestock operation has been dependent on public land use and National Forest System land for a long time and has consistently cooperated with federal land management agencies to achieve applicable rangeland health standards and land use / forest plan objectives. Stone Cabin Ranch and the other main plaintiff in the case is one of the oldest continuous family-run cow-calf livestock operations in the state of Nevada, and also holds BLM and U.S. Forest Service grazing permits for their cattle. In the court case, the complaint for judicial review of agency decision relating to wild horses, it is established that the defendants earlier in the year had determined there was an overpopulation of wild horses in the SCC, and so it's Stone Cabin Complex and surrounding management areas, and that action was necessary to remove the excess wild horses within the SCC per a wild horse management plan. Despite this determination, the defendants failed to take action to remove wild horses from the SCC, which the plaintiffs claim is a violation of the Wild and Free Roaming Horses and Burros Act, causing harm to the plaintiffs, to the public lands within the SCC, to wildlife species and their habitats, and to the wild horses themselves. The Wild Horse Act specifically states the Secretary of the BLM shall manage wild, free roaming horses and burros in a manner that is designed to achieve and maintain a thriving natural ecological balance on the public lands. The SCC is home to two herd management areas, or HMAs, Stone Cabin HMA and Salisbury HMA. The appropriate management level, or the AML, of the Stone Cabin HMA is 218 to 364 horses. However, according to BLM data, the 2023 estimated population of Stone Cabin was over 435 head, or 120% above the AML. Salisbury HMA noted 388 head, which is 970% above the AML. Almost 10 times higher. Like they're supposed to have about 35 head or so, it seems like. The complaint notes that this exceedance existed even after an emergency wild horse gather within the Stone Cabin HMA between September 1st, 2021 and on October 26th, 2021, wherein 321 head of wild horses were gathered and removed from such HMA. In January 2017, Colvin and Son and Stone Cabin Ranch filed an appeal to the U.S. Department of the Interior to partially stay the BLM Battle Mountain District Tonopah Field Office's Stone Cabin Herd Management Area Wild Horse Gather Plan. It's a mouthful. That's what she said. Stating it was, quote, inconsistent with BLM's previous 2011 Stone Cabin Complex decision. According to the official appeal, they argued that the 2016 gather will not result in reducing the wild horse population below the AML of 364 horses in the Stone Cabin area as prescribed by the 2011 decision, and therefore will adversely affect their grazing operations by reducing the amount of forage available for their livestock and habitat for wildlife. Administrative Judge Sylvia M. Reichel ruled BLM's 2011 Stone Complex decision authorized periodic gathers and fertility treatments over the following 10 years to maintain the wild horse population at the AML. 2016 gather plan documented the continuing implementation of that decision and was not itself a separate appealable decision. Thus, their previous appeal was dismissed. So, they were still within that 10-year window of when they were supposed to reduce the herd size. And since they were continuing to gather, the judge ruled that they were within, they were within compliance, I guess. But now we're past that 10-year mark. So the SCC is not the only area with an overpopulation of wild horses based on the determined AML. Nationwide is estimated that 82,883 wild horses and burros. That's what there are 82,883 wild horses and burros. However, the total AML for the U.S. is only 26,785. So roughly 3 times the population of what we're supposed to have. Overpopulation by state, according to the BLM as of March 1st, 2023, is as follows. And all of these, except for Idaho, have like at least double the capacity. So Arizona has 6,670 horses and burros with an AML of 1,676. California has 7,020 with an AML of 2,200. Colorado has 1,537 with the AML of 827, so not quite double in Colorado. Idaho has 651 with an AML of 617, so they're pretty close to the upper end of their allowable amount. Montana has 205 with an AML of 120. Nevada has 49,268 horses and burros with an AML of 12,811. So 4 times, roughly 4 times the carrying capacity. Oregon has 4,573 with an AML of 2,700. Utah has 3,756 with an AML of 1956. Wyoming has 8828 with an AML of 3795. Compared to the same data from 22, most states decreased in the number of wild horses and burros roaming free, or the population numbers were very similar. However, in 2 states, Nevada and Wyoming, the number of wild horses and burros roaming free saw significant increases in just a year. Nevada's year-over-year population growth was 2,698 head, and Wyoming was 4,094. So that's those are pretty big increases. This wild horse issue is it's a touchy issue because you get a lot of horse Karens that think that no horse should ever die in a million years, and we can all just munch on sugar cubes together and live peacefully. But man, if they're not managed, they can wreak havoc, and they have on a lot of this country, and the way they graze, they clip the grass so it doesn't grow back, whereas like a cow pulls it up, and so it kind of it doesn't kill the entire thing, where a horse clips it off and then it just doesn't grow back. So you have to really really manage those things, because horses really can decimate an ecosystem if they're not properly managed. The cattle do a little better job at kind of going and finding feed, and they're they're a little better at it. But these horses are such a touchy subject, and a lot of these ranchers are just, I mean, they feel like they're just getting fucked constantly uh, by people that have no real interest in any of this out here. So uh, we'll see how that case goes and how it proceeds. But I wish him luck. Hopefully, there's some sort of reform comes out of it. But I won't hold my breath. This one was kind of following up a little bit on some of the dairy technology I was talking about last week. And there was a symposium at Texas A&M there in College Station, and this article talked about how, in particular, there was interest from producers in New Mexico and West Texas, where you're seeing kind of a boom of dairy farms in that part of the world. And a lot of it has to do with so one of the deal was like the monitoring technologies. Um, attendee was Franz Osinga from Proctor, New Mexico, who runs a 1,500 cow dairy. Came to see the anaerobic digester, which turns dairy manure into high quality fertilizer, as well as other technologies that the vendors were featuring that he can implement on his operation. For instance, he said the wide variety of sensors now available to be placed on cows are expected to save time and money. The sensors show him at the touch of a button on his phone the animal's temperature for breeding, rumination, and signs of sickness. This saves labor, antibiotics, and hormone use. These technologies allow the cow to stay in the pen and not be stressed by moving them to a sick pen. Essentially, we give them 2 aspirin on a bolus and they never leave the pen, Osinga said. It's a lot less stressful for our cows. So, uh, like the dairy, as much shit as I talk about the dairy industry, their technology usage is pretty prolific. Um, and then as far as the anaerobic digesters, I'm really intrigued by this whole technology, and I don't know how effective it is, but I know that there's some like money and that that operators can get from the government to switch to these things, which captures the methane from your lagoons, then turns that into some sort of usable fuel gas. I don't know whether it's methane or exactly what it is, but they call it a biogas. And then I also like the byproduct is a fertilizer, I guess. What participants learned and were most intrigued by was the biogas sales value has greatly increased over general natural gas price, mainly due to its trading value in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, yeah, so that's right. The whole cap and trade deal. By selling biogas to energy companies, anaerobic digesters on dairies can potentially create substantial revenue. Lou said the anaerobic digester holders in common ground in economic growth and the stewardship of land and water. Anaerobic digesters harness the natural process of decomposition, he said. Greenhouse gases emitted by manure are harvested from methane-rich biogas via anaerobic digesters. It has also been shown as an effective manure management strategy to reduce pathogens and the odor of manure. The post-digestion digestion effluent is a valuable fertilizer to support crop production as well, Lou said. The digestion process conserves total nitrogen and total phosphorus while making these nutrients more readily available for crop use. So the way they pitch it is seems like a win-win. I don't know if I don't know how much of that I would buy, but it seems like it's not a bad idea to look into. And the bigger issue is the issue of eastern New Mexico and West Texas, where it's pretty dry and arid, and those dairy cows take a lot of water, and you're already having a kind of a water crisis in that. Not kind of. You already have a water crisis in that part of the world, and yeah, you add more dairies in there that adds more stress to the groundwater supply. And like, are we moving towards like from Dodge City, Kansas, all the way to Death Valley, just being kind of one giant desert? Is that where we're headed? I don't know. But yeah, there's just it seems like the places where dairies should be, namely California, has been overrun with California and people. So they get pushed out to, Idaho and Nevada, Kansas, Colorado, Texas, and places where typically are not dairy country. Like Southwest Kansas is not, before the Californians moved in and built dairies there. Southwest Kansas was not known as dairy country. It's worked for a little while, but I just, it seems like places where the dairies should be, they can't be anymore because there's too many people. And those same people are now bitching at the dairy industry and the cattle industry about, climate change. And like, but you took all of our good land, whether you took it or, it's the rural version of gentrification. It's like things just ain't like they used to be. And a lot of it has to do with these new people moving into to places that used to be good agricultural land. And so you have to develop technology to make use of less land and create more stuff. I mean, it's kind of the bane of agricultural existence in the 21st century. So I don't know. I'm gonna leave that topic on a big wide open. I don't know, but we'll go across the ocean and towards the Mediterranean Sea. We'll head over to Israel, the Holy Land, and this was an interesting story I found. So bulletproof vest-clad volunteers try to get Israeli dairy farms functioning again. So when Israel was granted statehood by the United Nations, or recognized as an independent sovereign state in 1948, what had happened was they had the Zionist movement, which a bunch of the Jewish diaspora, which, Israel has been conquered many, many times by just about every empire in that part of the world. And seemed like particularly the Romans, though, but the Romans kicked most of the Jews out and said, get out. And they spread to the world. And a lot of them ended up in Europe. You had the Holocaust, World War II, and then a lot of the Jewish community, particularly the European Jews, said never, ever again, we need our own state. They petitioned this newfound United Nations, and one of the first things they did is they make the state of Israel in what was former Palestine, former Ottoman Empire, as deemed Palestine by the Brits, who took it over from the Ottomans. And anyhow, what they did was essentially is what we did in the American West. Is they took their version of the Indians, which are the Palestinians now, and they uprooted him, moved him off the land, essentially shuttled him into the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and then they sent homesteaders out into these newly conquered lands. And because you fight to get the land, then you got to keep it, and the best way to keep it is by having people there. So they built these homesteads, or what they call a kibbutz, as opposed to homestead. But it's essentially, I don't know acreage wise how big these things are. Probably not very big, because Israel as a whole is not very big. But they built these little farms, or a kibbutz, and so essentially this is like your homesteader in in Comanche country. Like, we're gonna build a farm here, we're gonna raise some cattle, and we're gonna raise some crops, and at the same time we might have to fight off a bunch of Indians. And in this case, instead of Indians, they got to fight off a bunch of Arabs. Well, when the October 7th Hamas attack happened and the massacre, a bunch of these kibbutzes are about 10 kilometers from the Gaza border. And, well, Hamas, when they made their attack, they hit these kibbutzes, massacred a bunch of the workers. And oddly enough, a lot of the workers are immigrants from Thailand. A bunch of them got shot, and the ones that got away, they're trying to get back to Thailand, which I don't blame them. And the Thai government is kind of working overtime to try to get them back. In the meanwhile, 10 kilometers away, you've got about 2.5 million people that probably would kill for a good paying job on one of these dairy farms on a kibbutz. But that's neither here nor there. I don't know the region well enough. I don't know the culture well enough to see why that wouldn't work. Except for, they just kind of hate each other. And anyway, so now they've got when that happened, everything went in lockdown. Obviously with good reason. Everybody can see why that would happen. And so a lot of these kibbutzes ran out of feed. One of them had to just turn all their cows out and let them fend for themselves, because they had nothing left to feed them. And so now they're finally able to get some trucks into these places so they can go back to feeding them. But like the whole time they're under heavy guard, armed guard, which there's a war going on over there. So yeah, tensions are a little high, but I wish these guys the best. I know I've made my opinions on this whole matter known pretty well on this show, and if you've talked to me about this issue, you kind of know where I stand. But I think both of the sides fighting each other, the Israeli government and Hamas, are like, there's not really a good side to pick there. They both kind of suck. But that being said, these kibbutz people, they're just trying to pump out some milk, make a living. And the Thai farmer, or the Thai farm, dairy worker, he's just some poor Asian dude trying to make a little bit of money. I'm guessing he don't care two shits one way or the other about, Jewish, Islam, Palestine, Israel. Like, I just working, man. And so it's a sad deal. And but it's good to see them try to rebuild from that. And they're taking volunteers from farms in other parts of Israel. And I saw a story about a bunch of cowboys from America going over, but they were like going to work in the West Bank, which is kind of disputed territory. And I don't know. It's just that whole region's a mess. And kudos to these people that just trying to get back on track and milk some cows. So good luck to them. I hope it ends well. It's a sad deal. Let's see what else. I guess the last last one I got here is kind of touches on what I was talking about earlier in the show. Same goes right along the same lines with the previous story about the Israeli um, dairy farm, but we're gonna go to South America now and Panama Canal restrictions. I don't know why I can't speak today, but Panama Canal restrictions to stretch into 2024 as low water levels persist. Panama Canal announced another set of restrictions to reduce transit capacity as a result of continued low water level at Gatun Lake. And that's pull that up on a map. Well, Google Earth. Pull up the Panama Canal and see where this lake is. It's causing all these problems. Because as I'll go into here in a minute, it really is a major problem. Okay. Panama Canal. All right, so you have this long channel that cuts the Isthmus of Panama, connects the was that the Caribbean or is that the Gulf? I guess essentially it'd be the Caribbean Sea. Connects that with the Pacific Ocean. And where is there's the canal. So where's this lake? Lake Titicaca or whatever it is. That must be it right there. No, it's not. Well, that was a non-productive exercise. Okay, anyways. So Gatun Lake, I guess we could look that up. Gatun Lake. So this is an artificial lake. Oh, up there. Okay. And that's what supplies the water to the Panama Canal. Yeah, so right there is Gatun Lake, and right there is the canal. Gatun is a freshwater artificial lake to the south of Colon, Panama. 26 meters above sea level. It forms a major part of the Panama Canal, carrying ships 33 kilometers of their transit across the Isthmus of Panama. Okay. Now that we know what that's all about, the number of vessels allowed to move through the canal each day was lowered from 32 to 25 on November 3rd. Daily ship crossings will further decrease every month until next February when the limit reaches 18. The restrictions mark a significant escalation from earlier this summer, where June averaged 33 vessels per day with a high of 49 vessels that month, according to the canal's operations summary. Water levels at Gatun Lake, which feeds the canal, have reached unprecedented levels for this time of year, according to the Panama Canal Authority. Rainfall in October was the lowest on record since 1950, and the country is set to enter a seasonal dry period. Neato, that's going to be fun. Since the shipping canal began to pose draft restrictions in July, shippers have had to look for alternative routes and leverage freight diversions to move their cargo. Trade between China, Japan, and South Korea and certain regions of the U.S. continue to be impacted as 46% of container movement from northeastern Asia to the U.S. is facilitated by the canal. The canal is also an important gateway for the agriculture industry, and restrictions come as the grain export season begins in earnest. The U.S. exported over 26% of soybeans and 17% of corn through the Panama Canal in 2022, primarily to markets in Asia, according to Rabobank. China has looked to import more grains from countries, including the U.S., to offset a harvest headwinds from severe weather. China imports a lot of agriculture products, and not just food, but like fertilizer and all the stuff that, like, China's pretty resource poor comparatively to a lot of countries. So this is gonna hurt them, or it's gonna cause more grain to be trucked from the Midwest to the West Coast to get on barges there, as opposed to going through the Panama Canal. So a lot of times you'd get grain from the Midwest, floats down the Mississippi down to New Orleans, and then through the Gulf, and then Panama Canal to the Pacific. Capacity from Asia to the U.S. has decreased about 2 to 10% per week. So as much as 10% per week as carriers adjust to the weight restrictions, with lighter containers taking priority, said the C.H. Robinson VP of Global Ocean Services, Matthew Burgess. New restrictions are still being analyzed, and it could cause a delay of up to 2 to 3 days for vessels and containers. 2 to 3 days they might have to wait. But on the bright side, the bars and the whores around the Panama Canal zone are going to profit greatly, because that's like 2 to 3 extra days that all those sailors get to spend on shore and whore around while they're waiting to go through. So I don't know exactly how all that works, but I bet you there's an uptick in the price of puss in Panama here in the next February is supposed to go down to its lowest levels, and then we'll see from there. But reduced capacity in the canal could push agriculture shippers to the Suez Canal, according to the USDA's grain transportation report. However, that could bring its own set of risks, with the prospect of a widened conflict in the Middle East. And as we talked about a couple weeks ago, Suez Canal is in Egypt, which borders Israel, and is, along with the Panama Canal, one of the most trafficked or heavily trafficked areas in the world. With the Suez Canal, like 40% of global shipments moving through there. And yeah, so you got the Suez Canal, you have the Sinai Peninsula, and then right over here you got Gaza and Israel. So it's all of these little things worldwide can have a huge impact on what goes on in the good old US of A. Here's the Suez Canal over here. Gaza Strip is right over here. Sinai Peninsula. So Egypt, Israel, Gaza, Suez Canal. Should that whole region, because as of right now, it's just between Gaza and Israel for the most part, but you have Lebanon up here kind of fucking around with Hezbollah. Syria, there's some fuckery going on. I don't know what's going to happen with Jordan. Is Egypt gonna finally say fuck it? We're not holding back anymore? The Saudis going to get involved down here? Is Kuwait, is Iran over here going to get involved? Who knows? It's all a big unstable powder keg. In the meantime, over in Panama, low water levels, and gonna have to buy a couple extra whores while you're waiting to get through. And some would say maybe that's not such a bad thing. Others would say, fuck your whores. That is a bad thing. And I'm here to say, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know. It's stuff to keep an eye on. I think, long story short, things are going to get more expensive before they get cheaper. Going out on a limb here. But anyways, that's all I got for you, I think. Let me check my tabs. I think that's all I've got. I gotta give Jen Hill a shout out on the cattle on feed numbers. She sent me that article a couple weeks ago, and I just haven't mentioned it until today. So anyways, shout out to her for that little heads up. And yeah, this has been the Friggin' Farm and Ranch Report for Monday, November 13th, 2023. Hope you all have a good week, and move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Your eyes up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. We'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Is just a gather, and you won't catch 'em all. But when you ride through the gate, make sure you sit up tall. I can see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Burning daylight. Burning